Hello and welcome to the Savory Autumn Favorites Culinary Workshop. You're all here to learn how to make things that are tasty and pleasing to the eye, things which you're inspired to fix for yourself and for your family, all out of a nutritional pattern that's called whole food plant-based no oil, which I'm simply going to refer to as whole food plant-based for brevity. And I applaud each of you for choosing to take this bold step in the right direction. But first, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm endorsing this. I'm Greg Bergner. I'm a family doctor and the medical director of lifestyle and wellness at Barton Health. Nutrition is one of the 4 pillars of health at Barton Wellness, the others being exercise, stress management, and having a sense of purpose in life. Unfortunately, today, I'm unable to be here in person because I'm in Southern California, attending an annual conference on plant-based nutrition. And so you don't think that I'm just a doctor talking about a subject which we've been so famously under-trained in. Let me give you a little bit about my background. In medical school, our nutrition education came through our teachings in biochemistry, in immunology, bacteriology, pathology, and physiology, not as a separate course in nutrition. So it's a bit of a stretch to say that we didn't have any training in nutrition. I was a primary care doctor for 25 years and then in urgent care for 13 years. And during this time, I witnessed huge changes in the patients that we treat. More and more of them were sicker and with multiple chronic diseases. And I also witnessed huge changes in science. And partly because I was seeing this increase in how sick patients were, I began to read articles on what is causing this rise in chronic disease. In addition, I read over 20 books on the subject, I attended conferences, and finally, I did the coursework to become certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which is the recognized medical specialty organization in this area of medicine. In all of this investigation and study, the message repeated by virtually all of the experts was that the standard American diet, SAD or SAD, is not only bad for us, but it's a major root cause of many of our chronic diseases. And beyond studying why the SAD is bad, I also investigated what nutritional patterns are good. And in my opinion, as well as in many others, this nutrition pattern, whole food plant-based no oil, is the best of the best. And knowing that, I think the challenge before us is to make this nutritional pattern tasty, to make it pleasing, to make it sustainable. And that's what you're going to learn today, not from me, but from June, Yvonne, and Jean, who are expert not only in the whys of this nutritional pattern, but also in the hows. Now, I'm looking at this first slide. The claim is there that a single nutrition pattern is best for 4 very different but very important things: chronic disease prevention, longevity promotion, vitality enhancing, and planetary sustainability. Seems a bit outlandish, but wouldn't you say? Yeah, but how can this be? So let's look a little closer first at chronic disease. First of all, the conditions on this slide are the major chronic diseases that I'm talking about. You probably recognize all of them because they're common. Each of them can be improved with a whole food plant-based nutritional pattern. And most of these chronic diseases, like heart disease, our #1 killer on the upper left, can be avoided. Or if you have it, it can often be reversed. And at the top of the second column is cancer, our #2 killer. It's estimated that 25% of cancers can be avoided with improved diets, and if you already do have the big C, you can improve your outcome by adopting this nutritional pattern. And to give you some perspective on the causes of death in the United States, when you add cancer deaths to deaths from heart attacks, you got more deaths than from all of the other causes combined. If we could only improve just these 2 chronic diseases, the impact would be huge. But wait, there's more. We can improve these other chronic diseases too. Nearly 80% of our healthcare costs, $3 trillion, are due to chronic diseases that can be avoided or reversed. And you understand then why it's so critical that we get a handle on this. And since I mentioned healthcare costs, I want to say just a couple things. First things, we spend over $3 trillion on healthcare, and you've all heard how despite this amount of spending, we don't have the best health statistics. And in fact, we're towards the bottom of the markers of good health when we're compared to many other first world nations. And secondly, we're spending nearly 80% of our total healthcare budget on chronic diseases which are avoidable. That's incredible. It's something we need the general population to learn and know about, and it's something that we need to change. We've got to get a better handle on this to improve our economy as well as our health. And to be fair, changing these statistics is more than just changing our diets, although the diet is a huge part of it. It's also about getting out and exercising. It's learning how to develop tools other than alcohol and cigarettes to handle stress and to have a sense of purpose in life. Now, we don't have time to discuss all the chronic diseases in this list, which whole food plant-based can help. And since we discussed how whole food plant-based can reverse heart disease at the last culinary class, let's talk for a moment about reducing the risk of cancer, our second leading cause of death. Now, just mentioning cancer strikes fear into the hearts of many. Yet in my career in medicine, we made incredible improvements in cancer treatment. Most people who get cancer today can hope to live 5 to 10 or more years beyond their diagnosis, whereas when I was first in practice, it was often less than 5 years until patients died. But to survive cancer isn't exactly a walk in the park. We've all seen patients with no hair, or known how sick patients have gotten when they're undergoing chemotherapy or radiation therapy. And that's besides their risks for infection and the cost of drugs and the labs and the imaging, the cost of doctor visits and hospitalizations. It can bankrupt families. And wouldn't it be far better if we could avoid the cancer in the first place? Well, when we look at cancer avoidance or prevention, researchers now think we can prevent 25 to 30% of cancers out there. Breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, and stomach cancer all have proven pathways to reduce their incidence. And prevention of other types of cancers is hopeful but not yet proven. And the intervention to reduce each of these 4 cancers is founded in nutrition. And you guessed it, it's by adopting plant-based nutritional patterns. So you see, antioxidants, which are found almost exclusively in plants, are part of this prevention, as is the reduction in inflammation, which comes with eating plant-based diets. It's also the result of avoiding the inflammatory response generated by animal foods and the inflammatory response tied to being overweight. And of course, it's not as simple as adopt this diet and you won't get these cancers. There's other factors such as environmental pollutants, toxin exposure, genetics, but it seems very logical that while we're waiting for science to produce actionable information on toxins and pollutants and the like, let's adopt what we know helps us avoid cancer and what we know helps our body fight it. We don't have time to go over each of the 4 cancers that we can know we can prevent. So in the interest of time, I'm going to highlight prostate cancer. And the study that I'm going to mention is from Dr. Ornish of the heart disease prevention fame, and Dr. Peter Carroll, a teammate of his at the University of California, San Francisco, who's the head of urology. And they studied 93 men who were on active surveillance for prostate cancer. Now, let me tell you what active surveillance is. It's someone who has prostate cancer as a diagnosis. But you've probably heard of men who are diagnosed with prostate cancer have a slower growing tumor. And these patients are told that they likely will die from something else before the prostate cancer gets them. But you also probably know somebody who had a diagnosis of prostate cancer and they died of it rather quickly. So who's who? Well, patients can be sorted out by looking at molecular markers, by cell division times and imaging, and if they appear to have a less dangerous type of prostate cancer, they're often given a choice. And the choice is to have active, frequent, intensive surveillance, but no surgery or radiation, or they can move directly to radiation or surgery. Ultimately, the patients decide which route to take, and this study was taken on the patients who had chosen the active surveillance program. Well, 93 of these patients, they put on, half of them, on whole food plant-based diet, along with exercise and stress management group support. The other half had only active surveillance without any dietary change. And after 1 year, when they looked at the whole food plant-based group, their PSAs, which is a marker for prostate cancer growth, had decreased by 4%. In contrast, the control group during this same time had a 6% increase in their PSAs. And in addition, the imaging studies done at 1 year showed 8 times more growth in the prostate tumors of the control group than those who had adopted the plant-based diet. So how did this work? Well, at UC San Francisco, they had the good fortune and the privilege of having the 2009 Nobel Prize winner for medicine, Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn. And she received her Nobel for her pioneering work in telomeres, which are structures at the end of chromosomes, which have to do with longevity. And she's also expert in what turns genes on and what turns genes off. And so they engaged her in evaluating this prostate cancer study to see how the whole food plant-based diet affected the genes involved in prostate cancer. And what she found, that there were over 500 genes that were actually affected by the diet. And the genes which switch cancer on or accelerate cancer were turned off by the whole food plant-based diet. And the genes which turn cancer off were switched on by the whole food plant-based diet. It's evidence of how whole food plant-based nutrition improves prostate cancer, but it doesn't tell us exactly how it worked, other than by influencing gene expression. So that's currently an area of intensive research. So in finishing up on the chronic disease, let me say, it's true, there remains a lot left to learn, but we know a lot right now, and studies are pointing us to a simple, affordable way to reduce symptoms and causes of our most troubling diseases. We certainly have enough information to act, to improve our nutritional patterns. Unlike the listing of side effects for drugs, which you see advertised every night on TV, the harmful side effects of adopting a whole food plant-based diet can be summed up in one word: none. It seems we've been so enamored by the glitz of modern technology and modern medicine that we've forgotten just how good and how effective our own bodies are. If we feed our bodies well, they'll treat us well in return. Our simplest and our cheapest interventions set us up for being our best. So let's move on to number 2, longevity. Dan Bergner, a National Geographic Fellow, searched the world and originally reported on 3 areas where they had the highest number of centenarians, people who lived to be 100 years or more. And he wanted to know, how did they do it? Those areas were Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, and Loma Linda, California. And scientists have studied and reported on each of these areas. Now, many of you are probably not necessarily gung-ho interested in getting to be 100, but let me ask you this. If you aren't interested in getting to 100, are you interested in living 10 or 15 years longer than average in America? Because that's what the average person in Loma Linda does. Loma Linda has a lot of people living over 100, but the average person there lives 10 to 15 years longer than the U.S. average. And that's enough time to see the next generation, to see your grandchildren, not just as kids, but as grown adults with families of their own. If you have good health and vitality until the end, it allows you to enjoy them and them to enjoy you. So let's look at what these studies have to say. Here's a depiction of the commonalities of the factors they found important in looking at the big picture in the blue zones. Notice that it's not all nutrition. There are social determinants of health, like having a family, having no time urgency, being physically active. When we look at the darkest blue section at the center of this diagram, as far as the dietary pattern is concerned, they list a plant-based diet. In addition to having a family, no smoking, physical activity, social engagement, and legumes. The foundation for their dietary patterns was in plants, whole plants, as in whole fruits, whole grains, whole vegetables, lentils, seeds, and nuts. They didn't eat processed foods. Processed foods are foods which are prepared and packaged with parts of them stripped away for shelf life and for other reasons. Processed foods are also those which have things added, like high fructose corn syrup. In 2014, the World Health Organization declared processed animal foods to be class 1 carcinogens, proven to cause cancer. So we're talking about ham, bacon, pepperoni, sausage, lunch meats. But we want to stay away from all processed food, not just processed animal foods. Processed plant foods aren't good for us either, like white flour or refined sugar. So let's move on to vitality, because if we just live longer and we can't enjoy life, we're not really achieving years that we necessarily want. So in Western cultures, we have our youth, we have our working lives, and hopefully we have our retirements. Retirement is a goal in our culture. We support retirement with programs like Medicare to cover our health care and Social Security to provide income when we no longer work. We look at retirement as a time when we have freedom to enjoy our families and friends, but we can't do much of this if our health is not there. So getting to retirement takes more than just time. It takes planning too. Not only financial planning, but also health planning. We categorize financial investments by their risk, and we can look at many of the determinants of health in that same context too. If we want a long life with good health, we need to pay attention to taking good care of ourselves. Now, if the only thing that someone wants to live for is jumping off of tall cliffs with a winged suit on, that person probably doesn't need to worry about what he eats. It's not going to affect their longevity. But if we're going for being active until the day we die, we better pay attention to risk and to what science has to say. Now, science tells us that whole food plant-based can reduce risk of over half of our chronic diseases and add healthy longevity. The most common question I get from patients and even doctors is, but with whole food plant-based, where do you get your protein? They skip right over the disease prevention and the longevity, and for some reason they worry about protein. Well, there's plenty of protein in whole food plant-based eating. It's in beans, it's in grains, it's in legumes, it's in certain vegetables and certain fruits. And it's there in sufficient quantities, even for professional athletes, like those shown here in this slide, who are all whole food plant-based athletes. We know that most Americans actually eat too much protein, not too little, and they have more kidney stones, more osteoporosis, more kidney disease to show for it. So eat from the variety of foods in whole food plant-based, and you won't have to worry about your protein. Now, before I conclude, I want to elevate one last thing about whole food plant-based, and this goes beyond your individual health. Most all of us know, and we can see, that we as humans have caused great damage to our planet. Our population is increasing, and we desperately need a plan for stability and sustainability for the future. And by adopting a whole food plant-based nutritional pattern, we as individuals can have a huge impact. When we consider that livestock accounts for 14%, nearly as much greenhouse gases as the entire transportation sector, planes, trains, trucks, and cars, that 75% of agricultural land is devoted to raising animals to eat, that cattle enterprises are responsible for 80% of the deforestation of the Amazon, and worldwide, livestock is the most significant contributor to nitrogen and phosphorus pollution of streams, lakes, and coastal waters. So it's something to pause and to think about. This is one thing that we can do as individuals to help make our planet sustainable for our kids. It's not something we have to wait for a Paris Accord to happen or rules and regulations to enable. It's something we can do today if we choose to. And yes, we'll all still die, but let's live life with good health and vitality. Let's avoid many of these chronic diseases. Let's actively enjoy the retirements that we worked hard for. And let's choose to adopt habits which help us sustain our planet for our children. So having choices makes it important for all of us to choose wisely. And lastly, I want to show you a 1-minute video clip from Canada, which I think frames our choices well.